This time we'll dismiss the kids to go to Kids Corner. I'm glad for our kids and Gabby's involvement with them. I'm glad you're here today. What a beautiful week. Where can I order this weather for a long stretch? This is just ideal. Sleep with the windows open. Cool. Ready? Don't have to run the electricity with air conditioning. This is right in the sweet spot. This is perfect. And thanks for that music this morning. I really enjoyed that special. All the way around. I enjoyed the words. I enjoyed the orchestration. I liked all of it. Thank you very, very much. In the next few weeks, I want to take a look at kind of where we are and where we're going. Now, I don't know about you, but in our house, when the kids were growing up and we went on family vacations, they would take a familiar theme. Now, I can name you the vacations we took. We did the northern Michigan up into Canada vacation. We did the unfortunate vacation to Florida. We did the Black Hills of South Dakota. We did the Smoky Mountains. We did the Washington, D.C. Shenandoah National Park, the Niagara Falls with the stop at Cedar Point, and we did the one all the way out to Colorado. Now, all of these in our house were road trips, which meant when we packed up, we had one big cooler somewhere in the minivan. And in the cooler was either jelly and peanut butter or bologna and cheese and a loaf of bread and a jar of applesauce and maybe a few yogurts and some apples. And we would drive until we hit a certain spot. We got hungry, and then we'd look for the rest area. And we'd pull off, and it was the road trip picnic lunch. And that's what we did every vacation. We we discuss, because we can't really remember. There was the vacation, we're in the rest area, and in the middle of our lunch, descended on us chickens. I don't know where the chickens came from, but they decided to camp out around our table. Maybe they were waiting for stuff to drop from the table, but chickens kind of descended. And one of the favorite things to do is when we get there, I'd go into the building at the rest area and find a big, huge map on the wall. And there'd be the arrow, you are here, boom. And then I'd look to where we're going. Now, when you're in the middle of Nebraska, and you have been seemingly driving forever, and you say, wait a minute, I'm not even close to halfway across this gigantic thing yet. Or South Dakota. A number of years ago, my wife and I flew to Salt Lake City where we rented a car and we were going to drive up to the Tetons. And the plan was we were going to go, and we realized we were just driving. We were just going to go. We got hungry. We'd pull into a McDonald's and get a sandwich and just keep going. That's not our normal choice. We're going to keep it simple. Well, we had driven for about 3 hours, and you'd think anywhere in the country you drove for 3 hours, you'd pass by a McDonald's, but shockingly, no. And so we pulled into a gas station in Cokeville, Wyoming. It's an actual place. And I looked at their big map. You are here, and here's the Tetons, and I looked and quickly did math. If I haven't seen a McDonald's up to this point, and there are no towns between here and the Tetons, I guess dinner's going to be gas station pizza at Cokeville, Wyoming this night. I think it's time maybe for us to look at the map. Here's where we are. And maybe start to chart a course for where we want to go. Maybe today starts that process. In a few weeks, you'll have the chance to help us by telling us what is important to you and how we are doing in the areas that are important to you. So today I think it's a good idea to stop and take at least a first step and look a little bit of where we are. And I'm reading out of 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 9 through 12. Well-known passage. The author writing, and he says this, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people, in order that you may proclaim the mighty acts of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Beloved, I urge you as aliens and exiles to abstain from the desires of the flesh that wage war against your soul. Conduct yourselves honorably among the Gentiles, so that though they may malign you as evildoers, they may see your honorable deeds and glorify God when he comes to judge. So who are we? Where are we at right now? The first thing I would like to say is that we are a chosen people. The first thing I want to say, what does that mean? Now remember back in the good old days, when you would go out on the playground, and very quickly the group would determine who the two guys are that are picking sides for the basketball game, the dodgeball, the whatever you were playing at recess, and you would begin to pick sides. And it was always either strategy if you were the picking, or if someone else was doing the picking, you always liked to be amongst the first names picked. It feels good. When we read this chosen few, this does not mean that we're talking about a select group of people, or only a group of people that have been predetermined, pre-selected by God, and only those people are allowed in. I will, however, say the only reason that any of us are part of God's family is not because we were smart, or we had wisdom, or we were better than anybody else. All of us are only here because of God's grace. We just think that grace flows to everyone. We are enabled to move toward God because his grace moved toward us first. His grace came to us before any of us even followed Christ. His grace awakens us, draws us, accepts us. That is why we can say we are chosen. Our only discussion is who is part of the group. We would say anybody can be part of this group. It's open to everyone. Your neighbor, the people you work with, your family, anyone. It also tells us that our primary identity in life is a follower of Jesus Christ. That's important because we live in a world where we're starting to divide ourselves up into our tribes, and we won't cross our tribal boundaries anymore. We're dividing up into bands and tribes, and then we're shocked when we see tribal behavior. One of the things that Jesus was all about is, no, you are called by me. Before you're anything else, before you're an economic group, an ethnic group, a racial group, a political group, a club, you belong to me. Your primary identity is Jesus Christ. Not Republican, not Democrat, not economic this, white collar, blue collar, anything else. In fact, he goes on and says not only this, but we belong to God. In fact, we were bought with a price. This is uncomfortable language today, especially in our culture. I belong to no one. I'm my own boss. I call my own shots. I'm the captain of this ship. I choose my own destiny. I don't belong to anyone. Except that's not true at all. I can say, I call my own shots and put my foot down, but I will only say that usually when I'm outside of earshot of my wife. It's funny how we're responsible for each other. There are times in the week where I have to call her, hey, I'm still here. The line was extra. It took longer than I thought. I didn't think it would go this way. So here's where I am. I'll be home now at this time. She calls me. Hey, just to let you know, I'm leaving early. I'm doing this. Or she'll call me from the grocery store. Hey, I'm at the grocery store. What do you want for lunches next week? It's just courtesy. Parents all the time look at their kids and say, hey, going out with friends, right? Yes. You're going to be home by 11, right? Dad, right? Or, hey, as you're out with your friends, don't forget what your last name is and what this family stands for and what we do and don't do. Or something like, son, daughter, you have my implicit trust. I hope you realize how valuable that is. Don't do anything to throw that away, because you don't want to ever throw that away. It's hard to get that back. We use language like that all the time because we do live in relation and responsibility to each other. Teens even tell parents, and some of you have been through those years or just getting those years, yeah, Mom, I love you, but drop me off at least a block away from school. You embarrass me. Now, there's little in life that's more fun than embarrassing your teenager. In fact, I would find ways to do it. Go out of your way to embarrass them. We all have a level of responsibility to each other. Even now, work carries responsibility outside the workplace. They promised us when they invented these things that it would bring us freedom. And what we found is they are wireless leashes that our workplace employs at all hours of the day. In fact, if some of you were caught doing something you shouldn't be doing, you might be terminated at work even though it wasn't at work where this thing was done, because you brought bad reputation or bad publicity to your place of employment, and that might be cause of termination, because we really do live in responsibility and in relation to each other. We live in a time and a place that tells you, that it's not your business what decisions I make, except that it kind of is. There's decisions that I could make that would bring a level of ill repute to everybody here. I could affect my kids for the rest of their life by decisions that I make. I could affect all the friends, the people that I'm in relationship with in life by the decisions that I make. Because we really aren't alone. And of all the people that have a certain amount of responsibility or claims for my life, let me suggest that Jesus Christ has maybe the greatest claim. Because I've been bought with a price, and it was a significant price. So God has a certain claim on our lives. I'm going to reproduce it sometime. In the next week or two, I was handed a prayer this week, and I read it, and it was really, really good. And I first read it, and I just glanced through it, went, all right, and then something started to kind of impact me or resonate with me, and I read it again, and I read it again, and I realized, wow, this is really, really good. And it's basically, the thing was, it was saying, as I get anxious, Lord, as I get, if I get fretful about my place and what's going on in my life, help me realize that maybe there's a greater purpose for where I am right now. And may I just learn to be content with where I'm at and learn how I can serve you. And it might be that I'm the person that you need in this spot right now, even if I'm not comfortable with it. It was more than that, and that was a terrible paraphrase. But it was good. The one thing that I want us to know is we're also not who we used to be. This is always good for those who are Christian to remember. We are not different. or better than anyone else. All of us are people with a past. All of us have personality traits that need to be overcome. All of us can be unpleasant in the right circumstance. The vernacular is, all of us have a jerk button. And sometimes there are people who know how to push the jerk button. No one is immune. We've simply been forgiven and granted new life. We've been set in a new direction and pointed which way to go. That is so important. It's not so much to think about here. We live in the great checkerboard part of the world. Almost all roads run straight east, west, and north, south. It's real easy. We miss our turn. We go to the next one. We just do the 90 degrees. We get right back where we need to be. But part of my growing up was in southern Indiana, and that's not true there. No road runs north, south, east, west. There are roads where it's possible to, while you're driving, you see your own taillights. Think about that. And if you get lost, you need someone to point the right way. And it's not you go down to the 7,000 block south and you turn left. It's, no, you go to the black barn. Not the red barn, the black barn. And turn left. And go to the creek. Actually, if you're in southern Indiana, to the creek. And you go this way. We've been given a new direction. But it's more than that. We've been granted His Spirit to empower us and to go with us and to point the way. One of the interesting things now that is possible, and I bet we've all done it. We've been in a new place. There's someone in the car, and the person in the car pulls this out again and turns it on Google Maps and hits the button and tells you where to go. Of course, not exactly, but the Holy Spirit is a constant companion and presence with us. Not only empowers us for the trip, but is pointing out the directions along the way. When we get in trouble most of the time is because we fail to listen to those directions. Because we want to go our own way and do our own thing. I would say this to my culture. When we say that the Holy Spirit empowers us, let me be very specific what that means. The Holy Spirit does not empower me to reach my goal. We are empowered to reflect the person and character of Jesus Christ. I'm empowered to do His will. I'm empowered to accomplish the task that which I've been given. I'm empowered to live a life of holiness. But what does that mean? Now, I've heard in the past, someone said to live a life of moral purity. I'm all for moral purity, but I'm not sure that that's always perfectly possible. Or there have been other well-meaning folks who have been wrong in the past to live a life of perfection. We won't even go there. But we're to live lives of growth and grace and peace and love and service to others. About 3 weeks ago, Alex preached very well here where he talked about without holiness no one will see the Lord, and he twisted it around on us a little bit and said, perhaps without your holiness no one else will see the Lord, because we're called to live relationally with other people. Our lives make an impact on those around us. So we're called not just to dust ourselves up so I can make it to heaven someday. That's not what it's about. I'm called to live in a way that makes an impact, that brings the presence of Jesus Christ to the corners of the world that it hasn't been before. I'm called to be His hands, His feet, to make a difference. We all know this. So my question is, where are we this morning? And it shouldn't say what day is it, but we had a slide wipe out this morning. We tried to recreate it at the last minute, and that's my fault. We had a file that wouldn't work. So who are we in 2019? Here's my answer. We're a very strong, vibrant church in the middle of mega church country. I can go down south, I can point you to Willow Creek, I can just go over here, we got the chapel, we got the Harvest Bible, and shocker, there is serious problems at those places. I say with sadness. I like being strong and vibrant. Sometimes size is not indicative of strength, it's just indicative of size. We're also not Catholic, and that is not a put down on Catholicism at all. Don't take it that way. But there are reasons why we're not Catholic. Primarily ones, I don't look good in a gold pointy hat. And there's historical things that are going on at the same time. There's theological reasons. That doesn't make them non-Christian, and I would never ever state that. But there's some important differences there that I think worth having a discussion about. We're also decidedly not Calvinist. And I have many Calvinist friends, but there are important reasons why. Couple of them. I firmly believe and strongly believe, and I'll go gospel for gospel and tell you that it is because God's grace flows to everyone, not just a select few. I will also jump up and down. The motivation of God's work in this world is love, not wrath. And so there's important discussions to be made there. Grace reaches everyone. Many of you know people who struggle with life right now. You're related to some of them. You work with some of them. You're friends with some of them. They struggle with life. And they also struggle with faith. And I will just bet, even though I'm not supposed to bet, and I won't bet, but I'll just bet. You know what I mean. Metaphorical spiritual betting. I'll just bet that a lot of the people that you know who struggle with these questions don't struggle because they've never heard a gospel message, but because they've heard the wrong one. And so they've taken things that happen to everyone and drawn the wrong reason. And it was often an answer or reason a church gave them somewhere. We all have friends, we all have family members who need Jesus. Now, here's our task. Are you ready? Here's some things you've heard. Our task is to be nice people. Sometimes it's good to be nice. Sometimes it's better to be ornery. I'm not sure that's true. Our task is not to help people. Now, along the way, hopefully a secondary thing we do is maybe help people, but that's not our primary task. Or at least not in the way they think. Are you ready for our task? Our task. It was our task 2,000 years ago. It was our task 100 years ago. It'll be our task 20 years from now. Our task is to connect people to Jesus. And in doing so, their lives are changed. And our world is changed. Now, our unique task here is a couple different things. Our unique task here, I think, is to not only bring people to hopefully a good knowledge of Jesus Christ, but also, are you ready? To heal people from things that they might have been told somewhere else. That is why we are starting to do some of the things we're trying to do. We live in this unique day and age, and we'll do it imperfectly, and we'll try to do things better. And I wish we had $50,000 more dollars, and we can $100,000 more dollars. We could really expand, but that's not the case. That's why we're streaming our services. If you're joining us online, please keep doing this. Leave us a message at the end of every summer just to check in. Hi, we're joining you. Good to see you. If you have a need, will you tell us? We'd love to pray for you. We want you to feel a part. I'll pray for you this week. If you live in the area and haven't done something like ever taken communion in a while and you feel the need to, send us a message. I'll show up at your house and we'll do it together. Our unique task is to help people heal from things they were told somewhere else. That's why we also have a YouTube channel. We're starting to go through the New Testament. After that, we'll go through some theology from our perspective, because a lot of the answers we get are from a very specific perspective that a lot of people realize is kind of a cul-de-sac at the end. It doesn't lead anywhere. And so it's our task. We can point people direction. Hey, join us in church. Come with me. I'll take you out to lunch. I don't want to do it. Okay, at least for a couple weeks, see what we're doing. You can tune in online. Just listen. Or here's the sermons on YouTube. Here's our channel. What's your channel? Mundelein Church Nazarene. Boy, that's easy. And you'll see sermons. It is part of a larger picture of what we're trying to do. It's still coming into focus a little bit. I'm starting to think about the next step. I'd like to be a place where people can go for answers, a place where people feel safe, where we're not going to tell them non-constructive things. I know that somehow tonight someone could turn on a TV station and be promised that if they just believe enough or have enough faith or send somebody some money, that they or someone they love will be healed, because that's what God does. And it makes me angry, because if that guy actually had that power, then what's he doing on TV? He should be at Northwestern Hospital, downtown Chicago, and he can start in the pediatric oncology section. There are a lot of people in places like that who are desperately praying prayers and have been told a false thing. There's a lot of things like that. There's a lot of people out there who were told as a kid, hey, you struggling with this, if you just pray a right prayer, that desire will go away. Really? I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure about any of that. I want to be a way station, kind of a part of a network that begins to lead people in a healthy way. So we're starting to do that. We want to be a place where someone can come and when they walk in these doors, feel accepted, feel loved. And if you have an idea, well, it's fine, but I wish the church did this. I mean, it's easy to see that this would work. Well, have you told anybody about it? Because it might not have been easy to see, and you might be right, and you're probably right. Now, let me give you a word of warning. Are you ready for the word of warning? If you come to me and say, here's what we need to do, this would work, my response to you is going to be, when can you start? I will help, I will jump on board, I'll do whatever, but when can you start? God doesn't speak to me any better, clearer, louder than He speaks to you. At all. There were years in between 1994 and 2003 where I was doing grad school and I was attending church. Oh, sometimes I'd be 3 months preaching someplace, but I was a person in the pew. And there were a couple times. There was the one year, ready for this? We were doing Handel's Messiah, the choir. And about 3 weeks into practice, the choir director quit and left. And the pastor says, Doug, we want you to take the choir. Really? Are you sure about that? There was another time when all of a sudden there was a bunch of teens. I don't have time for this. So we started doing some teens on one of the nights of the week and taking them to snowball retreat and other such things. Because it needed to be done. And see, God's church moves forward and grows together when we are active in doing things. Because we don't have to worry. I don't want you to be fearful of failure. We actually have the Holy Spirit that goes with us. I'll tell the story just in closing. I've told it before. My wife and I were in Middletown, Ohio for 2 years, right out of college. It was in Middletown, Ohio. Kyle Schwarber's hometown. Adam was born there. And I was a youth pastor. And for about a little over a year, we lived in this apartment complex on Euclid Avenue. And we lived in the top floors, 2 stories. It's a 2-bedroom apartment. And below us, there was 4 doors. You know, there'd be 2 doors on top, 2 doors. They were all outer doors. You wouldn't go inside, outer sidewalks, staircase. And we were up and to the right, the bottom door to the left, was a single mother and her daughter. Her daughter was named Susan. Susan Conover. And she was about 14 or 15, and we kind of ran into her. And she was often sitting on the stairs, you know, and wasn't in the house. I don't know all that was going on. And so she started to hang out with us, and so we just started to take her to church with us. It got to be a regular thing. We just kind of took her, Susan, all the time. And we're only there about 2 years. Now, we left, went to Kansas and Texas, and I think it was probably 10 years later. I can't remember why we were driving through Middletown, and it was a Sunday. We just stopped in to church just to kind of see. We didn't recognize most of the people at all. There were still a few people that were there. And church was over, and a nice young lady in her mid-20s came up to us, might have been upper 20s, and she said, "Hi, Doug and Michelle." And we said, "Hi." She goes, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "I'm sorry, I don't. You don't look familiar." She goes, "Well, 10 years ago, I probably looked different. I was Susan Conover from the apartment below you." Of course, she looked completely different now. And when they dismissed the kids, guess who was doing the kids' ministry at that church? I don't know that there's a voice of God in there, but the work of the church is not done by just Alex or just me. In fact, the best stuff is not done by either one of us, because it's your network, it's your friends, and we're empowered to do these things because we are a chosen people, a holy nation. We belong to God, and we're commanded to live such good lives that people may know our good deeds and glorify God. That's our task, who we are. Next week we'll talk about why we are. Let's have a worship team come up, they would.